All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to free yourself from guilt. So Tuesday we talked about the foundation of being your authentic self. And with that, especially once you really tap into like, this is me, this is who I am, it's very easy to feel guilty, especially if you've had other people try to influence who you are. We have been conditioned sometimes in a way to think that we deserve to feel guilty, that the things that we want, we should feel bad about. We should have some kind of guilt, some kind of remorse. And really, guilt is 90% never a good emotion to have. And there's one instance where it is, and we'll go over that. But anything else, it is something that is workable, that you can work through. But just know that if you are feeling guilty about something, that there are ways to kind of stop what you're doing, stop going down the rabbit hole. Think about a couple steps to be able to kind of move forward and still go after what you want to go after without letting that guilt stopping you from what you want to do. Guilt also comes from an area where we feel that we have to be perfect, but kind of the start of being able to free yourself from guilt is knowing that we are all human. And as perfect as the influencers that you see, the streamers that you watch, the friends that have the oh so grandiose life, they make mistakes. We all do. And so one way to kind of start is to identify that every human being, your parents, your friends, everybody you've ever seen online has made a mistake and they have felt guilty one way or another. When you feel guilt, also know that you're not the only one going through that. I kind of mentioned how guilt isn't always a bad thing. It's really important though to make sure that you're identifying what is and what is not healthy. It can actually motivate you to do things. It actually can also be that indicator to you that you have the potential of correcting something that you've done to be better for it. It can motivate you to recenter yourself, to get back on track and really realign yourself with the foundation of who you are, what your values are, your authentic self. Guilt, while it's something that we don't want to carry all of the time, when it does come up, in a way, it can be reaffirming that you have to recenter yourself, know that it's okay to make a mistake, and know that what you're going through is normal. The issue with guilt is when you don't do anything about it. When you let it fester and sit, you lose sleep, your behavior changes, your body language changes. That's when it starts to become a problem because you're starting to wear it on the outside and body language is very easy to read. Gosh, why do we feel guilty? Like, how many different things do we feel guilty about? We have everything from, body image, careers, influencers, finances, circle of friends. I mean, especially with everything that we're going through right now and how life has really paused. We feel guilty that we see some people that are learning 10 different languages during a pandemic and you've been playing a new video game. It's really easy for it to kind of find its way in, but it's important to kind of, when it happens, to understand why. There's always a why behind it. It's not just, I feel bad. There's always a reason. There's always something that has manifested itself in a way that you feel that guilt. One of the ways is acceptance. So like feel like you're not being accepted by others, or that the way that you think is wrong. You feel differently than how your friends feel. Your friends align one way, you align another, and you really want your friends to still include you, so you feel guilty for having the opinions that you do. Responsibility. So obviously this is much more of the physical sense of like you did something wrong, you made a mistake, you hurt somebody, so you feel responsible. You feel bad for the actions that you took. Or obligation. So obligation is more like you feel obligated to do something for someone for all of the wrong reasons. So say you want to help somebody, but you're there to take a selfie and post it on Instagram to tell everybody how great you are. And then you feel bad because you're in it for the wrong reason, right? Or a lack of action. So this is very predominant right now because with everything that's going on, because maybe you never said or did something that you should have done. Because we're all dealing with what we're going through right now differently. And so maybe there's a friend that's struggling, but you feel like you're also struggling. So you just kind of let them be and you feel bad because maybe you should have helped them out as well. So it takes time to really dig down and find out the why behind it. It could be many different things, but taking that time to really pause and look at it and say, what is causing me to feel guilty can let you know the next step to resolving that guilt, because it is resolvable. Guilt, again, is not something that we are supposed to feel. It is a response to something that we've done, an action that we've took, or a lack of action. So it is a response, your actual mental response to something that affected you. Now, it's normal to feel guilty. It is not okay for your well-being to hang on to that guilt and carry it with you for days, weeks, months, or even years. Guilt is really hard to address at times, because once you find out the why to the guilt, they could be very heavy topics. Some of these are kind of the everyday types of guilt that you could run into, but there is the type of guilt that maybe we did something really, really bad. We hurt somebody really bad. We're no longer talking to them. We lost people in our lives that are no longer in our social circles because of something we did. A knee-jerk reaction, a lapse in judgment for a split moment that completely changed the path of you and somebody else. Those are harder to address, but do know that you are not responsible to hold on to it. You can take the time to really figure out why you feel the way that you feel and figure out how to move past it, but nobody says that you are required to feel guilty all the time. So we're going to go over a couple of things. So we're going to look at resolving the guilt. Okay, so we've identified the why. We understand the emotion behind it. So now the next question is, how do we get past this? Because we can't hang on to this forever. Some of these are going to sound a little redundant or basic, rudimentary, like, oh yeah, of course, everybody says that. But the important thing with this is to really pause and invest that mental time with the issue. This one, to me personally, is probably one of the hardest things for me when it comes to dealing with guilt. The leaving the past in the past. I am what is called a fixer. I like fixing things. If someone is hurt, someone has a problem, someone's upset with me, the first thing I want to do is go into fix-it mode. What can I do? How can I show you that I'm sorry? How can I, fix the situation? And how can we be okay? You just tell me. I'll do it. I'm just a fixer. I can't stand for there to be conflict or issue. So when I feel guilty about something, the concept of leaving it in the past is probably one of the difficult things for me, because it comes back from time to time, and it doesn't even have to be related. It could be I'm at work and then suddenly I think about something that happened years ago. It just comes up. But when it does, that lets you know that maybe there's some unresolved personal guilt there, that maybe it's worth taking the time. It's not always fun and it's not always comfortable, but just taking that time to sit with it and say, okay, why am I suddenly feeling guilty about this again? Is there something that I can do for myself to reassure myself that I've addressed it, I've fixed it the best that I could, and I'm going to move forward? If it is somebody that is still in your life and you do have communication with them and you feel comfortable doing so, taking that first step to reach out to bridge the gap is tough, because it's an uncomfortable air. But it will take you taking that first step, especially if you're guilty about something where you hurt somebody accidentally, you said something out of line accidentally, something was just not in the right context. Reaching out initially to let them know that wasn't your intention, it's hard. It is really hard. It's easier to just kind of let it go. But what's going to happen 6 months down the road, a year down the road, it's going to pop back in. And what's dangerous with that is that if it is 6 months from now or a year from now, you may no longer be talking with that person. You may slowly drift apart because of that event that happened. If you have the ability to make amends with that person, do it. Do it as soon as you can, because you don't know what that relationship with that person could turn into, and you don't want to live with a regret coupled with the guilt, wondering what would that friendship still be like if I just would have said, I'm sorry. But do make sure that you're learning from the situation. If you do hurt somebody's feelings, or you said something that's out of line, or you cracked a joke that was just inappropriate, make sure that you're also having that conversation with yourself of, do I really understand why this person is hurt by my actions, or hurt that I didn't take an action, hurt that I didn't help them when they needed help? And what are you going to do to prevent something like that from happening again? If it's something that is so far in the past and you still feel guilty about it, there is kind of that personal conversation that you just have to tell yourself that it's in the past, it happened, you've identified the emotion behind it, you've learned from it, you're making efforts to be better from it, and that is the best that you can do. That is the finish line. So you don't have to prove it to your present self or your future self. As long as you've had that conversation to know that you've learned from it and that you're making those efforts to be better going forward, then you can release that guilt. You've done the homework, you've taken that time, you're okay. You're okay to let it be and just let it go. The second thing is to obviously fix the problem. So we kind of talked a little bit before about making amends if it's with somebody. That's just if it was with a, like a friend or something like that. But if it was with somebody that maybe you're not having that close of a relationship with, the clock that's ticking ticks faster, the less of a close relationship you have with that person. So if you're an acquaintance with somebody and you accidentally do something that you feel guilty about, the clock is ticking faster for that acquaintance, for you to bridge that gap, than a friend. A friend will be more patient. A friend will give you that time, but it is easy to burn bridges with people the less they know you. So make sure that if it is something that you identify as guilty, that you feel guilt, try to jump on it as quick as you can and do everything that you can. So if somebody is hurt, listen to them, listen to how they feel about it, what it means to them, because it's not about you in that moment, and be genuine. And then by being authentic, make sure that you're overcoming that and showing it to that individual that that's not really you. You've learned from your mistake, you've apologized, and you want to overcome it. Now you've done the part with actually addressing it with the person. The hardest part is the conversations that you have with yourself. So the person's already said, hey man, we're cool. I appreciate you letting me know. We'll just move forward. Great. Everything should be fine, right? Until you lay your head down and then you just think about it over and over and over. You play out the conversation again and again, and you wonder, why did I do that? And, is that really who I am? And you start having this weird narrative, and that's that guilt that's just still sitting there because you feel like you haven't resolved it. It's just sitting there. So what's important in this case, when this happens, is usually when you first start thinking, how did this happen? It's because you're holding yourself to some really intense expectations. Obviously, yes, we all want to be friendly and open and accepting and loving and caring all the time. We just want to be best all the time, be everybody's friend all the time. But we never leave room for when we trip. We think about all the things that we want to be, but you have to leave room and accept, I'm going to be loving and great and friendly and open, but I'm going to slip. And so instead of holding these perfect expectations, it's also a good time to remember that gap that you need to leave for yourself for when these things happen, because they happen. They do happen. You're going to feel guilty about something. Something's going to happen. You're going to feel bad about it. You're going to try to resolve it. You're going to have these inner monologues. You've got to have that conversation with yourself and say, okay, maybe today wasn't the best, but I knew that I was going to slip from time to time. I just know that I'm going to make every effort not to slip as much. So make sure that your expectations aren't too wildly out there, that it's such a perfectionist mindset that if you do make a mistake, it's like the end of the world because the guilt is even heavier. So make sure you're leaving that room. And after that, you also have to kind of let yourself know that you gave it your best shot to resolve the issue, to identify what happened, the emotion, why did you do it, what was happening in that moment. You've had all of that conversation. You still have to give yourself grace to know that you did the best that you could in that situation by learning from it and moving forward. And then obviously you have to give yourself a break. We are our own worst critics. The most genuine thing that people appreciate when you slip is the efforts that you make to resolve it. It could be band-aids and bubblegum to fix it, but at least it's something. So make sure that when you do something, even if it's small, that you give yourself that break and you know that you made that effort. Effort is better than no effort. and people will see that. Make sure that you don't let that inner discussion rule how you're going to be tomorrow, because if you're still riddled with guilt, it's going to ooze out of you in everything that you do. So on top of that, with our inner monologue, sometimes we need a friend outside of ourselves to metaphorically knock some sense into us. We usually have that friend or friends that when you think of somebody that goes to knock some sense into you, you usually think of somebody right away. Family, close friend. You just have that person that you know that you can go to that's just going to set it straight. It's like tough love. Those are the types of people that are great to reach out to when you feel really guilty and you've done all of the thought process with it. And you know you just kind of need like a metaphorical slap in the face just to kind of bring you back to the surface. So make sure that you're tapping into those friends. That's what they're there for, because you're going to be there for them because they're going to go through it too. Don't feel like your guilt is something that you have to sit with by yourself. You do not have to sit with it by yourself. You have friends that are around you. You have people in your life that care, that will listen and then will set you straight. Now, with those friends, that tough love, get ready, because they're probably going to give you some constructive feedback with it too. And it may not be things that you necessarily want to hear, but those people are going to tell you what you should hear, not what you want to hear. So if they're giving constructive feedback when you're feeling guilt and there's all this raw emotion, make sure that you're listening, because those friends, those people, those mentors, they're going to have some very big points to give you that outlier as to what they think of your actions. So make sure you're taking that in and evaluating that and putting that towards what you're going to do in the future to prevent an action from happening. All right, so the last thing, now this kind of sounds almost like that other slide, right? About having like that inner discussion, but the reason why this is brought up kind of again is because of how important this is. We sit in our minds so much and have these inner conversations that nobody hears all the time. And we sit with guilt over minute things, over big things. And we never really tell ourselves, we never say to ourselves, we'll say to other people, when other people make mistakes, you forgive them. Say, hey man, it's cool, we're good. But you never say it to yourself. And so it's important that you're treating yourself how you would treat a friend of yours. If your friend made a mistake and made a slip and they came to you and was authentic in being apologetic, making efforts to be better, and you forgave them, then you have all the reason to be that way to yourself. You have to forgive yourself. You have to realize that we will make mistakes, that we will slip up. But if you can look at it, if you can reshape guilt for it to be a positive thing, because it's a way for us to learn. Any tool, any reaction that our body gives us is a tool that we can either just ignore or we can use it to shape who we're going to become. Now, you probably have friends or coworkers or you've known people in passing that make the same slip over and over and over again and over again and over again. It's almost like when you think of that person, you think of that specific action that they do all the time because they're going through the same motions over and over and over again. They're not learning from it and they're not applying any type of structure to figure out how they're going to move forward from it and how they're going to use this event to build and make themselves better for the next day. Because all you can do is start over tomorrow and try again. But as long as you make that effort, that extra small subconscious effort to be a little bit better than the day before, then guilt can actually make sure that we're on the right path, being a good person. So just know that while guilt is a horrible feeling, it is okay to tell yourself that this is something that is going to shape me in one way or another. And it's up to me to decide whether I let this consume me or create me. So it's up to you. Guilt is one of those things that a friend could tell you something till they're blue in the face, but you have to be ready to make peace with it, make effort, and move forward from it. If you decide that you're going to sit in that guilt, just know that it's going to be something that will sit with you, it will weigh you down, it will stop you from your goals, it will stop you from moving forward, and it can paralyze you to where it feels like you're living the same day over and over again. So if you put in the work and you take the time to slow down, identify, make that effort to resolve, and push forward in making small micro changes or pauses to prevent slips from happening, then you know that you're being better than you were before. And that's all you can do, is to continue to try. And if you slip again, that's okay. You just go through the process again and you learn from it again. You start from the beginning, you start with one, go through the whole process, and you do it again. But the more that you keep trying, it will start to build upon itself to where there won't be that slip for that particular thing. So, but it is up to you. Nobody can make you do it. So there's this cool thing you can do when you log off of a game. Check this out. It's really easy. It's big brain, okay? You log back in.